so much for signing in. Rancho Los Alamitos sits atop Povunga, the sacred site of creation of the local Tonga Gabrielino peoples. We are honored and humbled to care for this sacred gathering place, and we welcome you all to join us. People have lived and worked here at the Rancho for thousands of years, from the first people who continue to call this place their sacred homeland, through centuries of colonists and settlers and immigrants who have made their impact on this landscape. In 1968, the children of Florence and Fred Bixby donated the remaining 7.5 acres of the Rancho to the city of Long Beach. Today, our site is run by the Rancho Los Alamitos Foundation in a public-private partnership with the city of Long Beach. And in honor of the many women who have called this place home since time immemorial, and in celebration of 100 years of women's suffrage in the United States, our team embarked upon a 2-year journey of researching women's stories from the gathering place. This involved volunteers and interns and staff, and the goal was to tell women's stories from our site. So we're proud to honor these women's stories from the Rancho and celebrate over a century of women's suffrage with you all today. This project was made possible with support from the California Humanities, a partner of the National Endowment for the Humanities. You can visit them at the address on the screen, www.calhum.org. So we thank the California Humanities. Before we dive into the content of our program today, I want to share just a few quick housekeeping notes. Please keep your microphone muted during the program. Please feel free to use the chat and the reaction buttons to participate. And when I stop sharing the screen, I will encourage you to view the program in speaker view and full screen. We will have a live camera in our ranch house kitchen walking you all through the baking demonstration. And the best possible view will be if you view it in speaker view and full screen. You can let me know in the chat if you're having any technical difficulties, and I'll do my best to help you at a distance. And the last thing I'll note, as I mentioned at the beginning, we are recording this program, so we will share a link with the recording after the fact. And again, if you prefer not to appear in the recording, you can turn your camera off. But with that, I would love to introduce you to the inspiration for our program today, Lydia Shinkle, who you see on the right-hand side of your screen. She worked as the ranch's cook from 1920 to 1942, so over 20 years. I'll show you a photo of Mrs. Shinkle with her niece, Janie Mae, around the time that she began working as the ranch's cook, around 1920. We're going to be exploring Lydia Shinkle's life and work on the ranch from many different perspectives on the virtual tour part of our program, because in the work that Lydia did, she connected the many different people who lived and worked on the ranch. And so with that, I am going to send the presentation over to our live camera, who will begin the virtual tour part of our program before we head to our baking demonstration. And so I'm going to stop sharing and I'll spotlight our camera's view, and go ahead everyone and switch over to speaker view so you've got a nice big view of our virtual tour. And hello to Amber and Marion, who are operating our camera this morning.
Good morning, everybody. We're really glad to have you with us. We're going to enter the building here into this kitchen. And this building actually dates all the way back to the Spanish colonial period. It's over 200 years old. And this ranch house has been modified and built onto over those 200 years. We're entering the kitchen here, and we're going to take a child's point of view as we come in. And you can imagine being 10 years old and walking into this space, and tell us what catches your eye in this space. Marion's going to give you a look around this kitchen. So use the chat and let us know some of the things you see in this interesting kitchen. This particular ranch kitchen is the ranch's working kitchen, and it's the final location. Like the rest of the Rancho site, the location of the kitchen and the equipment in it evolved over time and hundreds of years actually.
And I see Liberty and Melanie noticed the cookies in the kitchen, and we welcome more observations about what you're seeing in the kitchen. But we want to bring it back to the Tongva, the first people who lived here. So the Tongva who lived at the village of Pavunga are the Pavuvetam, and they lived in domed homes called ki, like the ones that you see on the painting here. Very different from the building that we were just inside with Marion and Amber and our baking team. But they did their cooking outdoors, so different from the kitchen we were seeing just there. And actually, when you visit our site today, you can visit a part of the gardens known as the Jacaranda Walk. You can see that space on the left-hand side. And in the ground of the Jacaranda Walk are shells, which are the kitchen midden or the trash area of the village of Pavunga. So things from the outdoor cooking that the Pavuvetam did here at Pavunga are still visible in the ground. The Spanish, when the Spanish come to this site, they do a lot of their cooking outdoors as well. And over time, when cooking moved indoors here at this site, the kitchen's location changed at least twice. So now we're seeing the final location of the ranch's kitchen. And I'll send it back to Amber and Marion. And we're seeing some more actually observations that people are shouting out: the colors and the stove, the waffle maker, the pressure cooker, the coffee pot. So lots of great observations of this final location of the ranch's kitchen.
Thank you, Katie, and thanks for everybody for participating at home. Among the many, many meals that were cooked and eaten here at the Rancho during the early 1900s, cookies were seemingly abundant. Many people fondly remembered cookies being readily available when they were children on the ranch. Salvatore Vasquez remembered the pantry room back in the ranch house had a cookie jar always full of cookies. And according to Joan Spratling, the daughter of a ranch worker, in an oral history from 1989, Joan said, "I'd be up there playing or riding my bike or come to the ride at the ranch house and whatever. And I'd always go back there and get a cookie, a glass of milk or something. I'd go in and say hi to them and they would be busy. You didn't want to bother them too much when all the ranch hands came in. This was the great big long table and they were all breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And we did not want to bother them, but any other time. And they were always cooking." So we're delighted this morning to have Chef Alan with us from Willmore Baking Company and Rancho docent Joanne and her granddaughter Sadie here. Everybody give the camera a wave for the folks at home. And they're going to do some cookie baking in this historic kitchen. Chef Alan, can you tell us about what you're getting started here and how folks at home can follow along? Yeah. And then we'll resume our virtual tour after you get us started.
All right, pretty simple. We're going to be doing snickerdoodle cookies today with my amazing assistants here, Sadie and Joanne. And so let's not talk any further. Let's get started on the cookies. All right.
All right.
So Joanne, if you would please, we're going to start off with the butter here. 2 sticks of butter, 1 cup of butter, and that is going in the pan there. And what we're going to do is once we add our butter, this is unsalted butter. You can use salted butter. We just have to be using unsalted today. And then Sadie, like we talked about, I need 1.5 cups of sugar in there, okay?
Sadie's our expert measurer this morning. Sadie.
And what we're going to do, this is the most important part of your cookie right here. It's called creaming. So what we do is we cream the sugar and the butter. Go ahead, Sadie, throw that in there. Perfect. Now with those big muscles of yours, start mixing it up. Start creaming that up. And what you're basically doing here is just incorporating the butter and the sugar. It's called creaming. And like I said, that's the most important part of your cookie right here, is getting this nice and creamy. You don't have to mix it for a long time, just incorporate it together.
And it's okay if you touch it because you've washed your hands thoroughly
Yeah.
before you started baking.
Yeah. So Sadie, if you want to get in there with your hands, go for it.
And I'll just add, if folks have questions while we're getting started with the cookie demonstration, you can type those into the chat and I'll shout them out. And we can do questions as we go for Chef Allen. He's our expert here this morning.
It looks like it's a little easier to get it all creamed together with your fingers there.
Yeah, and you can use a hand mixer, an electric mixer. That's what I say. You know, keep going. Once the butter and the sugar, you'll see it. It starts to get a little lighter color. And at this point, you can add your vanilla. And I always say you can never use enough vanilla. All right, now mix it with your hands. Go.
Or just
Use your hands. They're already. And Sadie here wants to be a professional baker when she gets a little older. And I think she's, gonna do it. Now you see how it's starting to mix up there? Yeah.
So about what consistency are we looking for in the butter and sugar mixture?
Well, if you look right now, you see that you see how it's starting to turn a little lighter color? Sadie, keep going, keep mixing it. So if you're using a hand mixer or you're using, like a 5-quart mixer, something like that, you just want to mix it until your butter and your sugar start to turn a little on the lighter side. It's, as you see now, it's getting easier to work and it's getting a little lighter color. So at this point, Joanne, we're going to add our eggs, 2 eggs. Oh, it only gets better, Sadie. Yeah. Now get in there and start mixing it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
This feels so weird.
Keep going. You wanna mix it up really good. And at this point, you just want to mix your eggs in with your cream mix. You don't want to fluff it up. We're not trying to make a chiffon here or anything. You just want to incorporate your eggs a little bit to where they mix in with your. Keep going. You are doing so good.
This is slimy now.
Yeah, keep going. Oh. Now you see how it's starting to come together? Yeah, you're doing good, Say. Oh my God.
It feels less slimy now.
Keep going, you're almost there. Yeah.
Should we have preheated our oven if we were cooking along?
Yes,
Okay.
to 350 degrees.
350 degrees, very important. First thing you do, turn your oven on to 350. Now you see how it's kind of lumpy like that? That's okay. So, Joanne, what we're gonna do now, this is called cream tartar. Some people refer to it as acid salt. All it is basically a stabilizer for your sugar. So your sugar doesn't crystallize on you. And we're just using a teaspoon. So Joanne, would you put 2 teaspoons of the cream of tartar in there? And then we're gonna do 1 teaspoon of the baking soda. And then Joanne, about half a teaspoon of the salt. Yeah, perfect. All right. Now mix that all up.
Are there any other questions coming in there from home?
That's perfect. Sadie, that's perfect. Now, what I want, this is where it's gonna get fun. Now, I need 3 cups of flour in there. Joanne, you wanna put 3 cups of flour in there?
Okay, so this is a cup and a half.
That's 2 cups right there. So start off with 2 cups.
Should we add the vanilla also?
We added the vanilla, yes.
Oh, we did already. Okay.
Now start mixing. Sadie, go ahead.
Now it's getting fluffy.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. And what we want on your snickerdoodle here is when you start adding your flour, you want to get the consistency to where it's not sticking to your hands. Okay? See, as it is right now, it's still a little sticky, so you want to add a little more flour. Joanne, about half that.
And Chef, what kind of flour are we using here?
Well, we're using all-purpose flour, and I find if you can find it, the best kind of flour to use if you're making cookies is pastry flour. But pastry flour is a little hard to find, so your next best is all-purpose. Yeah.
Could you do this with whole wheat flour?
You could do it with whole wheat flour. In a pinch, you could use only if you don't have like baking powder, you can use a little self-rising flour. That'll kind of give it a little, give it a little kick. But we're not using baking powder in this. But keep going. You're and a little more flour. Joanne, put a little more flour in there. I think that's gonna do it. And it's pretty basic, Just remember to cream your sugar and your butter in the beginning, and and the rest is pretty 1, 2, 3 after that.
Chef, we've got another question here. Do you have thoughts on using cream of tartar and baking soda that are past their expiration dates? Do you recommend using those or not?
You can, but what you do is just use a little more, okay? Because it's just a guide, the expiration date. And what happens is your cookies won't spread as much. So what you want to do, use a little more, and everything should be fine. Yeah. So how's that feeling?
It's like feeling like fluffy, but like not as fluffy as it like
Okay,
one.
Joanne, add the rest of that flour in there, and that should do it.
Like when you like put the flour in it starts feeling really fluffy.
And you know what? And I'm gonna teach you a baker's secret here when you're through mixing. Get it all around the sides too. All right. That's perfect. And you know how to clean your hands? I'm going to teach you the baker. Go like this. With this hand, like you're making a fist. And take it, clean your hands like that. That's it. And keep going. Keep going. Go like this. That's it. Keep going.
On the other hand.
Then you switch hands. Now switch hand. Ah, yeah.
We've got an interesting observation in the chat. Someone read, or Helen read, that you can replace cream of tartar with lemon juice. Is that something that you would swap, Chef?
You can. You can, if you don't have cream of tartar, you can use white wine vinegar, or you can use lemon juice. There's a couple other things you can use too. But the best one to use is either, lemon juice or white wine vinegar. Yeah.
Thank you.
You are welcome. All right, Sadie, go wash your hands. And let me get the water for you. And I'm going to kind of jump in here for a second. This is what we like to call the baker's best friend. And for a simple reason that you can use any kind of scraper, but these I find work the best. And like I said, you can just, and it's ready to go. So we're going to take this. So once Sadie gets her hands washed, and Joanne, we're going to split this in two, and then we're going to put them on the pans.
When should we mix our cinnamon and sugar for the coating, Chef?
You can either do it in the beginning or at the end. So it's up to you. And here's another thing about cinnamon. I find that like vanilla, you can never use enough cinnamon. Okay. Some people like it a little on the lighter side. It's an individual thing. Okay. I kind of find that a lot of cinnamon just kind of adds to it. Okay, you ready? So now we're going to make our cinnamon sugar. So Sadie, 1.5 cups of sugar into the bowl there.
How many ounces of sugar is that?
Well, a cup is 8 ounces. So if we're using 1.5 cups, oh, that's perfect, Sadie, right? Just throw it right in there. And if you want to be technical about it, this is a tablespoon. You can start off with about 3 or 4 tablespoons of cinnamon. Okay.
I'm guessing some of the people at home might like more cinnamon.
Yes.
In my house, we consume
Why?
cinnamon in massive
Do
quantities.
2 more. So we're all through with this now.
This is spilling everywhere.
And while we're mixing that together.
So that's 3.
Mhm.
Okay, start mixing it with your hands.
Again.
Did you have a question from home, Sadie?
Nice. We have got another question about flour. This one comes from Roberta. She's wondering if fine pastry flour from Bob's Red Hill is a flour that you'd recommend.
I would. Pastry flour, I would recommend pastry flour for your cookies and stuff like that, but do not use pastry flour if you're going to make bread or anything. It's only for pastry flour, is only for your cakes, cookies, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Yeah. What do you think? You want more cinnamon?
Can I
Maybe
ask a
just
question
little.
about the
Okay.
pastry flour? What makes it different than regular flour?
Okay, it's milled a little different. Your pastry flour is milled, it's a finer flour. So if you notice the all-purpose flour here is very coarse. Your pastry flour is going to be very, very fine. It's like when you take your all-purpose flour and you sift it, the pastry flour, and it doesn't have the binding that the all-purpose has. So it's got more of a finer, so you get more of a silkier kind of cookie. You know what? Throw the whole thing in there, Sadie.
I will.
All right, mix it up.
I don't know if y'all can see it at home, but there's a fine cinnamon dust coming out of the bowl and it smells amazing in here.
Okay, now, this is what we're gonna do. So, Sadie, this is your pan. And Joanne, this will be your pan. And now I'm gonna show you, let's make a little room here. And you're gonna take you're gonna grab, well, that's beautiful. That is perfect though. You're gonna grab a little piece like that, and you're gonna go
Roll it into a ball.
and press it down like that.
Okay.
So you get started, and Joanne, go ahead.
My hand is.
Yeah, sticks.
So they're sort of golf ball sized.
You can make them, but those are perfect, yeah.
All right.
You can make them any size you want. These right here. Push down, that's perfect, right there. And then once you get them all in the pan, just take your cinnamon sugar and sprinkle, and don't be shy, sprinkle that cinnamon sugar on top. Some people roll them in the cinnamon sugar, it's up to you. It's an individual thing. You want to roll them in the cinnamon sugar, or whether you want to just put them on the cinnamon sugar on top, it's up to you.
All right. While everyone's rolling and patting their cookies, I think we'll continue our tour and we'll come back and see what things look like in a little bit. How does that sound, Katie and Chef?
Sadie, so put some cinnamon sugar on top.
Oh, perfect. We'll watch.
Before they leave.
Yeah, let's see a little bit of how much cinnamon sugar you're putting on these cookies, and then we can continue with the tour.
Like that.
So pretty
Don't be
generous
shy. Yep.
sprinkle
There
of
you go.
cinnamon sugar on there.
All right, quite a bit.
Fantastic. Well, while they are shaping those cookies and sprinkling that cinnamon sugar, and it looks like some of you are doing that at home as well, we'd like to tell you a bit more about Lydia Shinkle, who is our program inspiration for today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. You can see Lydia and her sister, Mary Stanbro, in this photo that I'm showing you now from around the end of the time that Lydia worked here at the ranch. Of course, there were always cookies on hand in the ranch kitchen. There was a good question someone sent me in the chat about if the recipe we're using today is Mrs. Shinkle's, and we don't have any written recipes from Lydia Shinkle, but snickerdoodle cookies were a popular cookie at the time that she worked here, and so this is a recipe created by Chef Allen. But to tell you a bit more about Lydia Shinkle, she was born in Oklahoma in 1876. She was the 12th of 19 children, and she grew up in both Oklahoma and Kansas. In 1907, she moved to Long Beach with her husband, Joe Shinkle, who became a lobster fisherman here. When he died in December 1919, she began working as the cook here at Rancho Los Alamitos. She was the first female cook here. Previously, the cooks were Chinese and Japanese men. And her sister, Mary, who you see in this image, also worked in the kitchen here at the Rancho too. Lydia Shinkle cooked 6 meals a day, 5 days a week, breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the Bixby family, as well as for the single ranch hands or the ranch workers. And so we're gonna send it back to Amber and Marion now, who are getting ready to enter the ranch hands dining room as they would have done. So back over to you.
Hello, we are here behind the ranch hands dining room. And the men would have most likely used this bathroom right here and walked up to this porch before coming in to eat. They'd wash up right here and enter the ranch hands dining room. There you can see the big long table that Joan Spratling mentioned in her interview. According to Elizabeth Shugren, a ranch hand's daughter who visited the rancho frequently, breakfast was always the largest meal, including steak or pork chops, hot cereal, hot bread, eggs, pancakes, carrot pudding, and coffee. Lunches were less extravagant but very filling, and suppers were the smallest meals. Imagine the physical strength and endurance preparing a meal like this would require. Now we have a question for you. In addition to cooking the food, what are some other tasks you think involve being the ranch's cook 100 years ago? You can type your ideas into the chat.
Thanks, Marion.
A lot of work went into being the ranch's cook, like planning a meal, shopping, and figuring out how to transport and store an enormous volume of food, managing a budget, and preparing to cook. For example, lighting the wood-burning stove very early in the morning.
And we've got some good ideas coming in the chat. Thank you, everybody. Yvette said ordering supplies. Sue mentioned the laundry. Elma mentioned washing dishes. Camille mentioned preparing for the meals, getting the wood for the stove, like you were saying, Marion. Sue's added heating water. Thank you all.
Yes.
So let's do
An incredible amount of work went into being the ranch's cook, and Lydia Shinkle was a highly respected employee with great responsibilities cooking for a crowd. Now we're going to head into Mrs. Shinkle's bedroom, taking the path she would have into her private quarters, located right next to the ranch hand's dining room. It would have not been appropriate for the ranch hands to see into her private space. So this door would have always been closed that you see here. So we're gonna go this way like Mrs. Shinkle did.
Sadie, you want to put these in the oven?
We can hear those bakers hard at work next door. That's how close Mrs. Shinkle's room is. As we mentioned earlier, Mrs. Shinkle was the ranch's first female cook, and she worked here for over 20 years. She started in October of 1920, coincidentally just 2 weeks before women became eligible to vote in the United States. She first met Florence Bigsby when they were both volunteering for the World War I efforts in Long Beach. They were around the same age and had similar values. Since we're now in her bedroom, take a look around at some of the things and tell us in the chat, what would someone see in your bedroom to let them know it was yours? We're going to visit a few different objects in Mrs. Shinkle's room that tell us about her life. Lydia's day, of course, began at 4:30 a.m. Chef was telling us a baker's life begins early in the morning as well. Mrs. Shinkle had to start the cooking fire and prepare to feed 6 to 30 people every day, depending on the season. This would even include 13 to 22 different ranch hands. We also see photos of Lydia Shinkle's family, and actually numerous members of her family followed her to California, including her mother and 7 siblings. 2 of her sisters, Mary Welshell Stambro and Sadie Welshell Thompson, also worked in the kitchen, but they did not live on the ranch like Lydia did.
And some people have mentioned in the chat that family photos and pictures are some of the things in their bedrooms that they have in common with Lydia Shinkle here.
Here we see some of Lydia's family. There's her mother and father on the right. And there she is with her niece, Janie Mae, on the left at the duck pond. And you can visit the rancho today during our open hours and see the ducks that we have in the duck pond. Mrs. Shinkle, or Lydia, became hard of hearing in her youth, and she used a hearing trumpet like this one to help her hear what people were saying. Can you cup your hand around your ear, if it's not covered in butter and sugar, and see how this device would help you hear better? Can you hear us better with your ear cupped like this? Later in life, Mrs. Shinkle had a battery-operated hearing aid. And you can see, just like in our bedrooms, Mrs. Shinkle's bedroom tells us more about what her life was like. So now we're going to make our way back to the kitchen and check on those cookies back out the hallway door instead of the closest door to the kitchen.
And again, we have that door closed into the ranch hands dining room because that's how it would have been during the time that Lydia lived here. But you can see in the photo that I'm showing you now just how close we are there.
All right, we're gonna peek through the window here and see how the baking's coming.
Well, we have 2 pans in the oven right now, and that's the last one that we're gonna bake off.
All right, it's
And-
looking good.
Yeah. And in regards, I'd just like to say one thing. In regards to the person that asked about the whole wheat flour, you can substitute whole wheat flour in the snickerdoodle. What you would do, whole wheat flour tends to be a little stiffer than your normal flour. So cut down on your whole wheat flour until, you know, it's kind of by touch. So the whole wheat flour is going to be a little stiffer. And I would start out with probably about 1/2 to 3/4 what the normal recipe calls for.
Oh, thank you. That's a good hint. All right, here we are back in the Ranch Hands dining room with Marion.
Mrs. Shinkle, she earned almost the same as the ranch foreman, $100 per month. A lot for those days. Shows her immense value to the Bixby Ranch operations. During her time at Rancho Los Alamitos, Lydia Shinkle connected the many people, including those who worked and lived here, like the ranch hands and their children, the Bixby family and their guests. Now we're gonna go ahead and head back to the kitchen to see what's cooking with Chef Alan, Joanne, and Sadie.
All right, here we go, back into the kitchen. Oh, we're already starting to smell it over here. Can anybody at home smell their cookies yet?
So if you made your cookies about this size, they take from about 10 to 12 minutes. Okay, we have ours. And what you want to get in a snickerdoodle, you want to get a nice, you see how they're forming a nice dome there. You want to get that's a good sign of a good cookie.
All right. Oh, Liberty and Melanie can smell their cookies at home. And here's the next batch waiting to go in the oven. Those look good.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So does anybody have any questions for Chef Alan or Sadie about the cookies? I'm looking to see if questions pop up. While we wait.
There was a question, actually. I was just scrolling back up through the chat. There was a question about parchment paper. What will happen if you don't use parchment paper like you have there, Chef?
Well, if you don't have parchment paper, you can use aluminum foil, but what you want to do is you want to put just a very, very light coating of some, whether you can, you know, an oil or put a little butter, you can run a little butter on the, but not a lot, because too much will burn, okay? Just a light coating, yeah.
Thank you. We also had a question about how snickerdoodles got their name.
Well, snickerdoodles, traditionally, they're a German cookie, okay? Now, I don't know what a snicker is, but a doodle is someone that's a little off center, okay? Yeah, and the reason they call it a snickerdoodle is because when your snickerdoodle, when it's fully baked, it kind of cracks a little bit and it looks like, you know, it looks like a crazy kind of cookie. So that's why they call it a snickerdoodle. It's basically German for a crazy cookie. Yeah.
Thank you. Roberta would like to clarify, so this recipe will make 3 dozen cookies, is that about right?
Yes. Usually about 3 dozen, 2 to 3 dozen, all depending, yeah. And if you're gonna do like these size with these, you're about a dozen. If you're using this size, it's usually about 2 dozen.
So these snickerdoodles on the right here that were baked this morning are about 3 inches across. They're pretty big. And our faux foodies cookies here are about 1.5 inches or 2 inches across.
Yes.
And we'll have to wait to see a couple more minutes how big our current cookies are.
Oh, you see, we have here 3, 6, 9, 12. So we're looking at about 3 to 3.5 dozen this size here.
All right.
Yeah. And you see how they're starting to crack a little bit? You see how they're cracking and they're kind of doming a little bit? That's a snickerdoodle.
All right.
And if they don't, sometimes baking is trial and error, okay? I've been doing this 55 years and I still scratch my head sometimes. And sometimes your snickerdoodles get a nice dome and they crack, and other times they flatten out a little bit and crack. But it's a snickerdoodle, okay?
All right.
Thank you. There's a question, Chef Allen, about how you got interested in baking. And at this point, I think we would love for you to share a bit more about Willmore Baking Company and the work that you all do in Long Beach.
Okay, well, let me start off by how I got into baking. I was telling the story. My father was a baker, my uncle was a baker, and I hated the hours. I swore I would never be a baker. So 55 years later, I'm still swearing that I'll never be a baker.
I think Sheila is going to join us and tell us about the Willmore Baking Company this morning.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We started working a few years back, 4 years back, at a soup kitchen. And I was working in it, and I noticed that they had some pretty poor looking desserts. So I went home, and Chef Allen was getting ready to retire from his job. And I said to him, they really need some desserts. So he started doing that. And a few of the regulars were telling me they did not have any, they really would love to be a baker, but they didn't have any way to learn. So I convinced Chef Allen to start teaching classes. One thing led to another. We were able to get a Long Beach Community Foundation grant from the Knight Foundation, and we upgraded the kitchen at Cesar Chavez Park. We teach classes at the park in professional baking. It's an 8 to a week class. Sometimes it's a 10-week class, depending on how well everybody does. The students will have no charge at all. It's totally free. We operate as part of the Willmore City Heritage Association. We are a program that they operate and funded through that. Now, students leave, they have a resume, they have interviewing skills. We have somebody who used to teach at the community college, and they now teach the resume and job interviewing skills. And we also, they leave with clothes to wear for an interview, because frequently our folks don't have anything that's suitable. And they go with the California Food Handler Certificate. If you are in California, you have to have the certificate. Oh, excuse me, the oven is timing right now. So we need to see
Okay,
this.
so Sadie, bring your, put that on. Joanne?
Thank you.
All right. So take the pancake flipper. First of all, Joanne, would you pull a pan out?
Yeah, let's see.
Oh, wow. So now take your pancake flipper and flip up one of those cookies.
Can you see the bottom?
So you can see the bottom. How's it look? You tell me, Sadie, you're the baker. Is it ready?
Yeah, it's ready.
Okay, what you want, you see how it's starting to turn a little brown around the edges? Here's
Yeah.
another bakery secret, okay? If you wait till the whole cookie is brown, it's overbaked. Once it starts turning brown on the side, you want to pull your cookie because why? Tell me, Sadie.
Because then it'll start getting brown and it might start getting easier.
Exactly, because it bakes on the pan when you take it out, okay? It continues baking on the pan for another 5-6 minutes. So we're almost there. You see how it's not quite just starting. So what would you say, another 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
All
Great
right.
job.
And just to finish up,
Yes.
we're hoping that COVID knocked us out of the park, of course. So we haven't had any classes. Chef Allen has been doing a coffee and dessert at US Vets. We do it outside once a month. And we will be teaching classes again in the beginning of 2022. So we have a Facebook page. It's Willmore Baking on Facebook, and we make announcements about when we're going to be doing classes and things. And we are more than happy to be here to help out with the Rancho.
Thank you, Sheila. I saw some comments coming in the chat about how amazing your program is, working on getting those food certifications. And what a wonderful program. And we're so, so happy to partner with you here this morning. I think it's really fun and special that we get to connect with people all over Long Beach from the past and the present.
Our pleasure. It's an honor. It's our honor, believe us.
I do want to say that before COVID, we had a success rate of 70% finding employment after taking that classes. So we'd like to get back into doing that as soon as possible.
Absolutely. That's really powerful.
Now, the final thing, once the cookies are about to come out of the oven, another tip, bakery tip. This is very important. A good baker always cleans up after themselves. Yes. So do not leave a mess for the next person on the table. You always have to clean up after yourself. Very important. Sadie, you ready? Let's get those cookies out of the oven.
Will they pull the next batch out? Katie, was there some more questions?
I just wanted to mention that I placed the link to the Willmore Baking Company's Facebook page into the chat. So you all are welcome to
Down there on the
all of the work that they are doing. I wanted to echo your comments, Amber, that we're so delighted to be partnering with them to activate our historic kitchen and bake some delicious cookies.
Put it up on the top.
All right.
So the next tray is going in.
All right. So let's see how they look.
Get a nice close-up.
Oh, those look so good.
You see how they cracked on top and they got a nice little dome? That's the doodle. That's the crazy cookie. That's
The doodle. All right.
Thank you.
I wish we had smell-o-vision.
Yes. There's a question about if this is the original oven in the kitchen, and no, this is not. So we can actually turn and show you the older wood-burning stove in the kitchen. So this would have been Mrs. Shinkle's preferred cooking tool, this cast iron wood-burning stove here. So the equipment on the other side of the kitchen went in a little bit later, towards the end of her time here at the ranch.
And I've heard that Mrs. Shinkle, even though she had the most state-of-the-art electric kitchen on the right side here, she still preferred this old wood burning stove and used it until she couldn't get somebody to give her wood anymore.
All right, so I believe that takes us to the end of our program today. We've seen those completed cookies, which look wonderful. We'd love to see any cookies that anyone at home has completed as well. If you'd like to show us your finished product, that would be really fun. I'm going to kind of scroll through and see if anybody's showing some cookies. They might all still be in the oven. But I'll share just one last photo of Lydia Shinkle. This is after her retirement from the ranch. You can see her here in 1954. And so again, she did incredible work here, cooking for a crowd, connecting the various members of the community here. And we want to thank you all for joining us for this virtual program today. It's been a delight having you, sharing our historic kitchen and doing this baking with you. We do ask that you complete a 5-minute survey to help us evaluate this program and to help the California Humanities know about this program as well. So I will be dropping that link into the chat, as well as the project name that you need in order to complete that survey. So we would love for you to share some feedback with us and to share some photographs as well. We would love to see any pictures of your cookies or of your baking at home with us this morning. It's been wonderful having you all. So I hope that you'll take a moment to complete this survey here and help us evaluate. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us at home. And thank you, Chef and Sheila and Joanne and Sadie. It was so fun to bake with you all this morning. Give everybody a wave.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.